Content presented on the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed during this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent views of the Whole Care Network. Always consult your physician for medical and fitness advice, and always consult your attorney for legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Hello and welcome to Daughterhood, the podcast. I am your host, Roseanne Corcoran, Daughterhood Circle Leader and Primary Caregiver. Daughterhood is the creation of Ann Tumlinson, who has worked on the front lines in the healthcare field for many years and has seen the multitude of challenges caregivers face. Our mission is to support and build confidence in women who are managing their parents' care. Daughterhood is what happens when we put our lives on hold to take care of our parents. We recognize this care is too much for one person to handle alone. We want to help you see your efforts are not only good enough, they are actually heroic. Our podcast goal is to bring you some insight into navigating the healthcare system, provide resources for you as a caregiver, as well as for you as a person, and help you know that you don't have to endure this on your own. Join me in Daughterhood. Marty Stevens-Heebner is an award-winning entrepreneur, author, podcast host, and the founder and CEO of Clear Home Solutions. She is also the president of NASM, the National Association of Senior and Specialty Move Managers, with certifications in Senior and Specialty Move Management, Professional Organizing, and Aging in Place. Today, we discuss all aspects of moving, organizing, sorting, how to navigate a hoarding situation, moving someone with dementia, the process of where to start when it comes to moving, and taking care of yourself along the way. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Moving is a huge challenge in good times, let alone when your parent has care needs and needs to move. As a caregiver in the midst of caregiving, trying to figure out how to downsize or pack all of their items, it's chaos. And remember, it's not just the things, it's the emotions that are attached to those things. Marty, where do we start?
Where do we start? You know, it's interesting because one of the things I've learned in doing this for 10 years is that every situation is unique and different. And especially when you're the family member and the daughter, the adult child, the parent never seems to forget that they're your parent.
That's true.
And so it's just normal. And it just people need to realize it's normal to butt heads at a time like this. And to realize, especially when you're the daughter working with your parent, that there's all this other stuff that's going on deep within them, recognizing that they're closer to the end of their lives. Like they can almost touch it usually at this point.
Right.
And that's upsetting them. Plus, these current older parents who are 85 plus, they're what I call the deprivation generation. Yes, they were the greatest generation with surviving depression, World War II, all of that, but they were also completely deprived.
Yeah.
And even if they were born shortly after, like say up to like 1950 or maybe the early 50s, all that trauma that their parents experienced was still inflicted on them.
Yeah.
And so they don't want to let go of a single thing. They don't want to be a burden. I think that's the biggest thing, is they were not allowed to be a burden. And so now they're in a situation where they need to be taken care of in different ways, which is lovely if they'll only accept that care and help.
Yep.
And it's difficult to get them to do that because they're used to being in control. They're used to being your parent. And now some things are getting out of control.
Yeah.
And it's tough when you become that daughter who's taking care of them. And I remember my father at one point, he made it to 90. My mom only made it to 58, but Dad made it to 90. He never remarried. She was the love of his life.
Wow.
But he said to me, he's like, oh God, I'm so sorry you're having to do all this. I said, Dad, you've taken care of me all these years. It's great to be able to return the favor and to take care of you.
That's beautiful.
Now, one thing that can really help, especially when you're moving and downsizing, and there are all those difficult decisions to make, is it can really help to have someone outside the family helping you. Obviously, I'm a pro at this. My staff is wonderful. There's this whole industry where we can come in and help you with that. So it's great to have a professional, even a friend or someone out, like I say, outside the family, a neighbor who can come in because they're not the family butting heads and that person is not their child.
Right.
And that can help. There's also this thing called the audience effect. The audience effect is when you're there, you're almost the neutral third party. And suddenly the two quarreling elements, the quarreling people want to look good in front of you. So they behave better. So this is part of the reason that all those things you've been telling your parent, mom or dad, you don't need 3 sets of china.
Right.
They're like, well, I need it for this. That was my grandmother's. And the neighbor comes in or a professional comes in and says, well, do you really think you'll use 3 sets? Oh, I didn't think of that before. And as the daughter, you're steaming. There's smoke. I remember there's smoke coming out of your ears.
Right.
So that's so much of the emotional component. And the best thing you can do is to, if they're really stuck on keeping hold of certain things, ask them, what's the story behind that? Not why are you wanting to keep that? Because they can interpret that in a way that's not so good.
Yes, totally.
But rather, what's the story behind this? And oftentimes when they can tell the story, it helps them to let it go because they've passed on that heritage, that legacy, that legend, that story, that whatever to you now. And you can tell them, oh, I'm going to remember that story. That's a great story. Sometimes that helps them let go of things.
Gotcha.
Also, in terms of, say, donating, I remember I had this wonderful client, Rose, and she and her husband had become very successful. He had passed away, but they'd started off with nothing. So she'd been going to all these garage sales when they first married and buying up these little plates to have some dishes to serve people on. And she still had a whole bunch of them and they were old, some of them cracked. And she said, oh, I guess we just have to toss these. And I could hear the pain in her voice. Yeah. And I said, no, we're going to donate these, Rose. And another Rose is going to come along and be so glad she can get these. And you could see her light up because she remembers being her younger self. Right. And then she recognized that this other person like her would come along and cherish them. And it made it so much easier to, emphasize that when you're donating, it's a gift. And sometimes when my staff and I are working with people, we'll say, I'm going to say thank you to you because you're never going to meet the person who actually uses this. So I'm going to say thank you on their behalf. And you usually have a little chuckle about it or whatever, but just to recognize this is the gift you're giving to someone. And that's a beautiful thing.
Oh, I love that.
Another way to say it, another thing you can say too, is like, you're not using this though. Don't you want someone like using this and really cherishing it and being glad that they have it? And that can kind of light people up too. It's like, yeah, it's meant to be used, not just stuck in the back of a closet somewhere.
That's so true. And it helps with the process.
Now, in terms of the overall moving process, and it is a process.
It absolutely
is. One day an event, especially if you're going to try to do it on your own or even with a few, like some family members and friends, start as far ahead as you can. Even if it's just like, well, I may want to move eventually in a year, maybe, or, they start to be open to talking about senior living communities and things like that. Say, why don't we start now? Just going through some things like, let me know. What do you think you'd want to take? And don't be surprised if it's everything.
It's everything. Yeah. Every last thing.
Thing.
I may need it. You don't know.
I may need it. And then, and that's the thing. If you start ahead of time, way ahead, just like I say, when it's a little like just the discussion's beginning, then you can say, well, why don't we keep track of how much you use it?
Oh, that's great.
I say, Mom, do yourself a favor. Dad, do yourself a favor and keep track of how much you use it. I mean, one trick to do is in closets when you're take the clothes and you know how you hang the hanger over the top.
Yeah.
Put from behind. So it's the opposite direction.
Okay.
And then just remind them, when you afterward, if you wear it, then turn it around the usual way.
Right.
And then you can tell what they've worn and what they haven't.
That's great.
And that can be helpful. And one really good, I don't want to say trick, but yes, daughter to daughter.
We're just talking here. Yeah.
It's a trick.
Yeah, we're just talking.
Is that you can, as and this only works really when they're moving locally or nearby.
Mm-hmm.
But we tell clients, like, look, it's not like your house is going to fall off the cliff the day you move. It's going to be there. So let's just take the minimum, like what you really need, and set it up. And then we can always cut back for things. The idea being, once they're in there and they don't have a lot of stuff, they realize they don't need it,
Yeah.
Well, you should go back and take a few things. And one of the things I discovered, like I said, I've been doing this 10 years, but early on I discovered what really makes a place feel like home is what's on the walls.
Oh, okay.
Because that's what, when you're up and looking around, that's what you're looking at.
Mm-hmm. That's so true.
And so that applies to a degree to bookshelves and things like that as well. But really let them know there's a lot of art we can take, a lot of photos we can take, because there's a lot of space on walls.
Sure. And you can surround yourself. It's like surrounding yourself with your things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And especially if those things are really familiar and it's their favorite, that alone can make it feel like home.
Right. Right.
And so they may not need as many other doodads and things.
Right.
And one of the things that's most important, I think, especially for people with dementia, is think about it. When you're in your bed, what's the first thing you see when you get up in the morning? What's on the other wall?
Yep.
What's the last thing you see when you go to bed at night?
What's on the wall? Yes.
And so, frequently we have televisions or something.
Mm-hmm.
With people with dementia, it's often great to have old photos and things like that they remember, because of course it's the long-term memory that hangs on the longest.
Right.
And that way it can center them. It can center them as they're going to sleep and getting up in the morning.
And that's the thing. There's different scenarios when it comes to moving, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a happy downsizing? Hey, we're going to downsize and we're going to move on. Or are they moving because they have to move because they need more care? Like, there's different scenarios. So for each one of those, there's a different set of how are we going to do this? So with the happy, it's happy. You hope it's happy.
Speaking, it's still an emotional process.
Totally.
And oftentimes if it's nearby, my friends are there.
Yeah.
They're living there. That's why I'm moving to this community.
Right. Right.
And it's still a slog through stuff.
Yep.
But it is an easier way to go.
Right.
And it's kind of rare. And there's always still a bit of reticence, but I think that is part of I'm older. And I actually had a client, she was 90, and she just said it out loud. She said, I feel like I'm moving to the place I'm going to die.
Yes.
And gulp.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just saying to her, you don't say, oh no, you're going to have a great time there. Why are you dreading it? And this is now we move to the case where people are really reticent. They have to move. They don't want to.
Right.
And so they're saying, I don't want to move. This is awful. I feel like I'm moving to the place where I don't disagree, and don't make it all happy. Let them have that emotion and acknowledge it, because it's a big emotion. That's a big wad of feeling right there.
Yeah.
And I remember this totally took me up. I was off guard. And I simply said, I can understand why you feel that way. And she actually did end up dying there during COVID. She got COVID. But I just said, I get why I can understand why you feel that way. Here's something to think about. They'll do all the cooking. They'll do the cleaning. Mm-hmm. And this was actually pre-COVID when I was meeting with her. I said, if you so much as sneeze, there's people there to take care of you.
Right.
And there's this whole community, people and activities, all of that. The important thing, though, is to acknowledge it. Don't say, oh, it's going to be great. Think of it that, because you're denying their feeling.
Right.
And that stokes anger.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you talk about empathy in this process, and it doesn't matter in which part of this, if it's happy, if it's sad, if it's anything, you have to be empathetic to their move, because it's a huge change. And we can't say everything's going to be great. Oh, you'll love it. We don't know.
No.
We hope. It's the right thing to do. At this time, it's the right thing to do. And it's almost like I have no other choice, so I have to do this. Yeah. And that's scary. It's a scary place to sit when you're that person.
Mm-hmm. And that the end is nigh.
Yeah.
And of course, in our culture, this is a whole other topic, but we don't talk about the end.
No,
and if
we
don't.
Only
would, it's a healthy thing.
Right.
Everything has an end.
Yes.
All the more reason to cherish where you are, what you have in that moment. And the same thing when you're working with your parents. just know they have those feelings. And now one thing I really want to recognize here, and I know you recognize it, and I'm sure your audience does too, the adult child and what they're going through does not get recognized.
No.
It's so much that you yourself are going through. And there are very few people who you can talk to. You can listen to this wonderful podcast and hopefully some friends who get it, who've gone
Right.
through it. But it's tough for you too. And I just really want to acknowledge that.
No, that's a really great point. It's really heavy, and it's something that we have to acknowledge for ourselves as caregivers.
Even as you're going through that,
Yeah.
try to you can't separate it, but to accept the emotions you're feeling. Just accept them and realizing that what your parent is going through is completely different. And it's not about them being mean, especially if they have dementia. They're not asking all these questions on purpose. They literally can't remember. And that includes during the moving process.
Mm-hmm.
They often they may forget that they said it was okay to donate that.
Yes.
Or when you're working with them, and I have to train my staff in this, when they have dementia and they might say, you, Roseanne, they may say, oh, Susan, who was their sister. And granted, you're the daughter, you're going, why does she think I'm her sister? Go with it.
Absolutely.
Just be their sister for a moment.
Yep.
And that's okay. Be in their reality. It can be kind of fascinating, actually, as you go with that, because sometimes you'll learn things that you didn't know about.
No, absolutely. And that's the thing. And that's the other part of caregiving, because especially with dementia, you have to put all of your feelings and all of your emotions over here for a little bit. Yeah. And you have to get into this world and you have to live in this world.
Yeah.
And you're having this conversation as whoever they think that you are. And it's great. And you can see them and you're with them. And then when you leave, you're like, wow, what just happened? And all of that you're carrying.
Yeah.
And in moving, it almost makes you feel like, and you're not, obviously, this is the situation, it's the condition, whatever disease, whatever. It's not your fault, but you're feeling like it's one more thing you're taking away from them. Mm-hmm. So whether it was driving or whether it was their independence that now they have to move in with you or they have to move in a community, whatever. You're the one that's saying you have to do, we really, you don't want to say have to, you really, we need to think about this. Maybe it's better, blah, 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 but it's you and you have to deal with that.
Yeah, you really do. And it's about also often emphasizing safety. Right. I mean, when you're dealing with a situation where it's a hoarding situation.
Well, you beat me to my next question, which is exactly that. How do you handle a hoarding situation and handle it without destroying the relationships?
It's a challenge, again, especially with family.
Yeah.
Now, when it's a hoarding situation, because hoarding disorder is now its very own standalone disorder with the latest DSM-5, and it's best to get professional or professionals involved, depending on how severe it is. I will, advise your audience, look up clutter hoarding scale in Google if you're curious about hoarding. It's actually a very well put together scale.
Okay.
It's a 1 to 5. And it's not just about the amount of stuff. It's the degree to which the home is in disrepair, vermin, that sort of thing. You may discover that actually your parents aren't that high on the hoarding scale. Mm-hmm. So the scale is very helpful to look at because often we do have adult children saying, my parent hoards. And then when you kind of go through this, they're like, okay, it's not as severe as I thought, but it can be, up to a level 5 and smaller. In that case, I really recommend that as the daughter, you don't take it on alone.
Okay.
Find some hoarding specialists. If your parents open to it, maybe find a therapist who specializes in hoarding. Whether they'll be open to that or not is delicate and tricky.
Right.
But if you can get some, for example, a company like ours that specializes, has a specialization in hoarding, we can come in with you and we just kind of know how to build that trust, because chances are, and this is completely understandable, that if you're a child of the person who is hoarding, mm-hmm. you've been trying to get them to downsize and deal with it for so long and they refuse and everything like that.
Yes.
So the parent doesn't necessarily trust you to come in and help them. When we're hired to help someone in a hoarding situation, frequently the first session or even the second session, very little gets put in a trash bag or in a donation pile or something like that, because initially we simply have to build the trust.
Sure.
So they realize we're not going to be throwing things out behind their back. We're not going to be judgmental saying, why do you have all these things? Oh, this is gross. This is just, no, it's not that. It's never that. Because there's a reason they have them. And also one of the things you have to realize is that somebody who hoards, or it's like with ADHD or something like that, their brains are built differently.
Right.
And it's executive function and things like that. And so you have to accept that they don't see things the way you do. And so when you're trying to move someone who is who has created a hoarding situation, this goes back to, let's just take the minimum over there, the things you use every day. And then let's just get you there so you're getting the care you need. And then we'll figure out what else to bring. And that can help separate them from that situation.
Right.
And then it makes it a little easier to get them to let go of other things. They'll still want to take more than probably you would like as their daughter, but that's one way to get them to cull things. Let's just get you there. And because the move is so bad, mom and or dad. I mean, you know how stressful that is. And chances are they haven't moved in 40 years.
Forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they don't remember. And they do vaguely remember moving, but of course now it's a completely different thing. It's a very different process. And again, given the stage of their life that they're in, it's a much more emotional process. So let's just get that part over with. Let's just get you in there. So, you're getting to know people there, and we can set up the room. Again, this is when what's on the walls is really important. And let them start living there. And they may be relieved to be out of that hoarding situation.
Right. What if they have to sell that house to move to the next?
Well, and that's the thing. Again, this is what professionals can really help you. Because we just know how to talk to them. Right. And also, we're not family. We're not family. And that makes a huge difference, difference. And especially when you can emphasize that things are going to be treated with respect. So again, the donation stories, how to explain that to them, realizing someone's going to really use this and you haven't seen it in 10 years or 20 or 30. Let's have someone cherish it.
Yeah.
That can help a lot. It's difficult. It's because you're dealing with someone who has a mental illness, a disorder. And it's like with any disease, there are sometimes limits. There's the pain of it. I really think, especially people who really are high on the hoarding scale, I think we're finally starting to really study the human brain. Yeah. I think we're going to discover some part of the brain where they are so attached to their items emotionally that for them, it literally feels like you're pulling something out of them when you take it away from them.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's something to keep in mind and ask them about the stories. That really helps. Now, it occurs to me, it might, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Nope, you go.
I was going to say, let me talk about kind of the stages of moving so you can get your brain around this sort of thing.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I feel like you're reading my mind today, Marty.
Start ahead of time as much as you can. If you end up with a very short window to get everything prepared, it's doable. This is when I really recommend hiring someone to work with you, a senior moves manager, which is what officially we are, where we come in and this is our métier. This is what we do all the time.
Right.
Let us ease that stress so that you as the daughter are not completely exhausted, or shall we say, even more exhausted than you already are, even more stressed out than you already are. We can take care of this. And if it's a short window, we have all the resources. We know the good movers. We know we get the whole process. Now, if you have more time and you're going to manage that on your own. So just try, and this is hard, I know, try not to take your parents' home apart until you absolutely have to. Because remember, it's their home and they're living there. So if you start packing up everything all at once and everything's off the walls, and it's going to be like they're camping in their home until they move. At the same time, you do want to get some things packed that they may reuse for holidays or something like that. And get that packed and just find a good place to stage all the boxes. You don't really want them in different parts of the house because, again, that reminds the parent constantly that they're moving.
Right. So visually, the visual is very important in this.
It really does. You put that beautifully. I'm going to swipe that. Yes.
Thank you. You can swipe that.
Just think about if you have a room painted, it's not like there's, and it doesn't feel like you're guest bed or your room or whatever. It doesn't feel that way. So the idea, especially the key living areas, where they sleep, the main bedroom, probably the kitchen, and then where do they watch TV? Parts of the living room or something like that.
Right.
Other areas, because they don't use it as much, you can probably pack up sooner.
Okay.
But take your time doing that. And also, if they're moving cross country or something like that, it can be really tempting to say, oh, just put it all in a box and let's move it.
Right.
Number one, that's more expensive.
Yeah.
More expensive.
Yeah.
And then people think move day is the worst. No, it's the day after move day when you're staring at all those boxes. And, God forbid you're realizing, oh crap, now I have to downsize.
Yep.
It's just exhausted and depleted. I think a lot of people know this. Moving is one of the key stressors of life. It's one of the top 5.
Yeah.
Depending on what list you look at. People call it they call it relocation. I call it dislocation.
Oh, I love that.
Because you're going to feel out of joint until you're settled into that place and you kind of know the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And when you're in a living community, you're getting to know the neighborhood.
It's scary because it's change.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody likes change. And then you throw a change in with a transition, which part B, we don't like transitions. So you have fearful transition. Oh yeah, let's sign up for that. Oh, and I've got to get rid of my stuff. Oh yeah, okay. Let's go tomorrow. Sure.
You kind of hit the emotional trifecta right there, right?
Yes. It's like, no, absolutely. So you work backwards. I like working backwards and working out of those scenes. And then what?
And then ahead of time, as far ahead of time as you can, when you have a sense of a moving date, call the movers immediately.
Yeah.
Start getting them on board. If they need to come do estimates, have them come do estimates. Check their reviews. I will tell you, I've saved a couple of friends who said, oh yeah, we're moving. We hired this mover. I said, and I'll say, I have not heard of them. And I said, so where did you find them? Oh, a friend said they'd used them or something. I said, okay, here are the questions I want you, talking to a friend, but also talking to your listeners. Yeah. Here are the things I want you to ask them. Number 1, are they bonded and insured? Number 1, and make sure that they have their Department of Transportation license.
Oh, okay.
They have to be licensed. Also, do the people who are going to be in your house packing and moving and all that, are they employees rather than subcontractors? Because then they can just pick up anybody along the way. You want them to be employees. First of all, they will be more efficient. They'll know what they're doing. They already know how to work as a team. Mm-hmm. And just as importantly, they should be covered by the company's workers' comp insurance. So if they get hurt, it's the company that covers them. You should ask these same questions, by the way, of any senior move management company or professional organizer that you're considering hiring. Make sure all this is in line with them as well. Although we don't need the license from the Department of Veterans. Right. But yeah, so they have employees, but still ask the question, do you have workers' comp?
Right. Because God forbid they fall down the steps while they're moving your table. It's on your insurance and not theirs.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So ask them that. Check their reviews online, Yelp, Google. Don't just look at Yelp or Google. Look at all the different ones. Check the Better Business Bureau.
Yes.
Just make sure they have good ratings and any complaints have been handled. And there's always going to be complaints if they've been in business for any length of time. And that's another thing to ask them. How long have you been in business? Mm-hmm. So check those things out, because I will tell you, I'm thinking of one friend who had hired a moving company. I said, go ask them these questions. She's moving from LA to Denver. She called them and she said they hung up just as she was starting to ask the second question.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, hey, thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, you're right. Wow. Exactly. It can be brutal. So you definitely want to interview them.
Yeah. Okay.
And I know with my company, I don't know that all senior risk management companies are like this, but at times we just handle the logistics for people because we have the list of resources. They want to take care of their parents and be there for the move and the unpacking and everything, but we can just provide the resources. We know which moving companies we really trust and know. The Holloway companies who will be there because we often help them build their businesses because we bring them in. So, they will be there at our beck and call.
Sure.
We know which donation organizations will pick up because at least I live in Los Angeles. There aren't many that do anymore.
Right.
So
the list of things that they accept now has shrunk considerably also.
It's brutal.
So that's also the hard part.
Yeah. And that's another thing. I'll quickly address this. Your parents will probably think, and you may also be thinking, that you'll make money from all their stuff.
Yeah.
Chances are not what you think, unless they have the Picasso hanging on the wall or a surprise in the attic. It's especially with furniture. In the trade, they call it black and brown furniture, leather or wood, black and brown. They
Okay.
just, there's a glut of it on the market, a
Yeah.
glut of it. And so unless it's pristine, mid-century modern, or if you have an original Louis the 14th that's in great condition and you can prove the provenance and all that stuff, you're not going to make a lot of money doing it.
Okay.
And if that's primarily all you have to sell, sometimes it's better to just do, offer it for free on Facebook Marketplace or buy nothing or something like that. Certainly call the donation organizations, but I want to prepare you with to manage your expectations.
Right.
Don't be surprised if it doesn't sell for a lot or at all. But at least you can give it away because there are people who need furniture.
Totally. Yeah.
Well,
but that's part of it also, while you're doing all of this. And it's like, oh, somebody could use this, or, your kids don't want your stuff. Just go with it. Just get rid of it. And it's hard to then find those places to then get rid of them.
Yeah.
And how do you find them? I mean, it's a Google search, but it's tough.
It is tough. It is tough. I have a recommendation that can be really not wonderful and also kind of fun.
Okay.
If you have the capacity to do it and your parents are open to it, have a giveaway party.
Oh, okay.
Have people over, identify what things are available for your friends and neighbors and family members to take. And then you have this party, so you get to hang out a little bit and things will go out the door. And it's wonderful because then you actually do have that person thanking you for it.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you. And they'll cherish it. And it's really, that can be a very fun event.
It's a great idea.
It can take care of a lot of things, but you obviously have time. It's the planning part,
right?
Planning for that time if you can, right, to be able to do that. And that's really lovely.
And it has to be with the idea of I'm okay with actually seeing my things go out the door.
Right.
That's the caveat.
It really is. And sometimes it can be easier to see someone you love and care about taking it. It's like, oh, wonderful. Versus even a estate sale where they might sell it for a couple of bucks, but you see this stranger going out. That's another thing. If you're having an estate sale, don't be there. You don't want to see people squabbling over some necklace that really means a lot to you or your parent. As it is, it's like for $7 and they want to pay $2 for it.
Right.
You don't want to see that. You're going through something that's hard enough already.
Yeah.
Let the professionals handle that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. And same thing with the estate sale companies. Again, ask them the same questions. Are they insured? Ask them the process they go through, because you do want to have security there if people are going in and around your house.
Yeah. People forget that.
Yeah. And then do realize that the unpacking too is going to be its own thing. Again, remember the day after the move, and movers will pull things out of boxes, but they won't organize them for you.
No.
So just be prepared for that. Again, you can hire someone or get a friend and neighbor. Here's the trick. So when you get friends, neighbors, relatives involved, especially if you want them packing and it's like the big, like it's just a few days before the move. So now you are taking the house apart or the unpacking. Here's my suggestion. Pick people don't just have bodies there, because then it just turns into a party and not a lot gets done. Because remember, this is not what they do professionally.
Right.
But pick people who are good leaders, who like to get things done, and have a list of assignments for people. Here, can you two go in, and if you can pack this bookshelf, perfect. And then let me know once you've done that. And also, how do you want things labeled? So really be organized with this and have wonderful rewards, like pizza, because food is key.
Always is.
Always is. My goodness. But anything like beer and wine, save that for the end. And tell them, I have all these great cupcakes for you guys once we're done. Once we're done.
Done. Right. No cupcake until we're finished with the boxes.
Exactly.
Right.
And do reward them like crazy at the end, because they don't usually shoot.
Sure.
Don't plan on an 8-hour day for your friends and family.
No, it's too much.
Yeah. Maybe 4 5 hours tops, because they're doing this on their own time over a weekend. It's a huge favor. So just be respectful of that. So you might want to do it a couple of weekends in a row or something like that. So it's really, it's planning for the move, it's doing the downsizing and packing. And also when you're sorting items, it's good to have a keep pile, a donate or sell pile, and then obviously the trash pile. And sometimes you have a maybe pile. What I found with the maybe pile is that if you let them do that, at the end of the day, when they're going through it, it's amazing how much of the maybe pile they will let go of.
Okay.
And sometimes that's where you listen to the stories.
Yep, that makes sense.
So just kind of delineate things that way.
And it really does come down to that. Like it really does. There's no way of getting around it when you have to move. It's trash, donate, keep, and now maybe. Like that's just it.
Yeah. Yeah. And if your parents really like their stuff, make sure with the trash, it's probably better not to, especially if they're able-bodied and can move around and everything, better to, if you're able to, take the trash home with you and toss it out that way.
Yep.
So they're not going to go diving through it. Same thing with donations. If they're ready to donate, great, I'll take these to wherever on my way home.
Yeah. Even if you don't, even if it's not today that you're going to donate them, just get them out.
Yeah. Because then they'll go through those.
Right.
And you really don't want them doing that. If there's something that they're really pining for, you can let them know, I know where it is. Even if you don't, I know where it is and I'll bring it to you. So separate them from their stuff when you can. So that's part of the sorting process. And then just know that move day will feel like chaos.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Even when we're involved and we're supervising the move to the clients, it looks like chaos. It's not to us and it's not chaos to the movers. We know what's going on. But again, this is what we do all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So we know the different stages and we know where everything is going. But when it's just you doing it and with your parent around, it's really difficult. Ideally, have someone else, if you can hire, have someone else kind of supervise the move or get a different sibling or someone else to supervise the move and take your parent away. Take them on a fun little trip, or you can have that other relative take them, but it's something where they're away, they're cared for, they're not stressed out, especially if they have any bit of dementia. Yeah. Very disturbing.
What if they want to stay? What if they don't want to go?
Especially with people with dementia.
Yeah.
They're really resisting it. Sometimes you can say something like, I call it a fiblet. You can say, well, actually, we're going to be working on the house. There's some repairs that need to be done. So we're going to take you to this really lovely place. It's kind of like a hotel. Because it is kind of like a hotel.
Right.
And we're going to make sure some familiar things are there with you. And so that's one way to get them in there, get them settled. And again, surround them with things that you know they love and are very familiar with.
Yeah.
Very familiar with. I always say, focus on their favorite things and their most useful items. Not everything will spark joy. I have issues with that way of doing things because, I have my reading glasses. Do they spark joy? Not necessarily, but boy, are they handy.
Right.
Things like forks, but things that they use all the time.
Right. And it's their feeling. It's their feeling. You're trying to decide what sparks joy in them.
Thank you for saying that. Yes, you're so right. What's your favorite?
Right.
It may be something you drew when you were 5 years old and you're like, really? Do you have to take that with you? But it means something to them. So let them take it. Let them take it.
Right.
That little, where you do construction paper and scribbles crayon. Yes.
Well, but then the question becomes, what if they have a box full of those, your things from kindergarten to a high school? And here's all your little turkey hands and all that. Okay.
Yes.
Is it time to get rid of them yet? Like how do you, as a mother, you look at them and you're like, oh, so how do you do that with people?
This is when we are grateful to live in the 21st century with our cell phones and the cameras built into them.
Okay.
Take photos. You can buy one of those digital frames for them. Just have those photos cycle on that digital frame. And then they're preserved. And especially if they are 20 years old or 40 years old, because you're, 40, 50, even in your 60s,
Right.
they're going to be brittle.
Right.
It's like, they're going to fall apart. Let's preserve them by taking a photo.
Okay.
And that can really help them let go of all kinds of stuff like that. Even objects. There is this wonderful new platform online called artifacts.com. Now it's spelled a little differently. It's there's only one A in it. So it's artifcts.com, artifacts.com.
Okay.
And you can actually upload those photos. It's built so that you can upload the photos of your items and tell the story. You can write it out. You can do a video. You can do audio. It's meant to be preserved there. And you can share it with the world. Or you can keep it private and just share it with individual family members that you want to share it with. But that way the memories are preserved. Because let's face it, this older generation, think of what they've lived through. Depression, World War II, the Korean War, the 60s.
Yeah.
All of that went about the 60s, the moon landing, and then everything that just takes it to the 70s. Now imagine everything else, right?
Right.
I mean, it's really been historic when you think about it. So much that they've seen.
Yeah.
And so preserve those things. If they have old magazines, they're not going to be valuable.
No.
But you can take photos of them. So they have that Life magazine photo or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So they have those. If they haven't, by the way, if they have all those beautiful National Geographics lined up on their bookshelves, usually good for recycling.
Okay.
But sometimes prisons will take collections of magazines and some books.
Really?
For those who are incarcerated.
Okay.
So that's something to think about if you're open to that. I don't guarantee they will take all of your National Geographic.
Right.
It's a possibility, if you have these collections and things.
Yeah. How about that? Well, how about knickknacks like Hummels and things like that, where everybody collected these things and now nobody's collecting anything like that.
They're not. And this is when something like Buy Nothing or Facebook Marketplace, where if you're willing to give them away for free,
yes,
frequently people will come and take them. Because there are people too who do swap meets and they'll sell them for like 50 cents. So it's really not worth it for them to pay something to you.
Mm-hmm.
But yet they'll find a room for it on their table or something like that.
Right.
And that way it's off your mind. One of the things I always keep in mind for me is when there's something, I could do this with some item. How much time is it going to take me? How much aggravation? How much time am I going to spend trying to figure it out?
Mm-hmm.
And more often than not, I'll say, I'll donate it, or I'm just going to let it go.
Right.
Do the simplest thing. Because otherwise, you can just go down the rabbit hole with these things.
Oh my, and it is a rabbit hole because it's like, you can turn this into a new, and it's like, okay, after I spend $400 and 25 hours of my time, sure, I could repurpose it. I mean, but why?
Yeah. Well, this is too also the garage sale.
Yeah.
If you have a estate sale and there's this vast amount of stuff, okay, great. But if it's not that much stuff and if they're not particularly valuable, something to keep in mind about a garage sale. It takes a lot of time to put together. If it rains, snow, you probably wouldn't do it when it's winter out, but if it rains or it's triple degree heat,
right,
no one's going to come.
No.
If you're an out of the way place, no one will come.
Yeah.
And with a garage sale, you might make a couple of $100. It's rare to make over 1,000 or more. Again, that's when you want to take into account, okay, how much time is this going to take me?
Yep.
I'm going to have to advertise it somehow, either on Facebook or signs and things like that. Really think about how much that time is going to take you versus donating it or giving it away for free.
Yeah.
So really keep in mind how valuable your time is, especially when you are that adult daughter dealing with everything else to do with your parents' care.
Yep.
In my line of work, we'll say we work with the DA in the family, the designated adults.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you were that.
I was.
You're the one who takes care of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're taking care of everything.
Right.
So anywhere where there's a simple way, especially with stuff, to take care of it, do that. I highly recommend that if your parents are wanting to give you things, and especially if they're insistent, simply accept them, take them home. And now that you have them, you have the right to do anything you want with them,
Right.
including donate. And if you're afraid, well, they might notice that I don't have it anymore, but then you have the right to say, like, what I did is I donate, and thank you so much. And I decided, trying to set, I have more lamps than I need.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why it's almost better, because you do get into these arguments, and again, families butting heads. Just say yes, thank you, and tell your children, in case they want to give things to the grandkids, just say yes, and we'll deal with it later.
While you're packing, you can also find out where all of the important things are. The life insurance policies, the passwords, the bank accounts, all of that is part of the downsize packing sorting, correct?
It is so important to have again, going back to planning.
Yeah.
To have that list, knowing where they are, having copies ideally. And also, this doesn't just go for your parents. This goes for you, the daughter, as well.
Yes.
You need those documents too. The
Yep.
will, the trust, where are the bank accounts? I remember I was so honored when my father, one time I was visiting in Buffalo, called me over, and he opened a desk drawer and said, okay, there's the trust, there's the will, these are the bank accounts, here's a safe deposit box key.
Mm-hmm.
I was so honored, because it meant that he knew I would not go fishing around.
Right. Right.
And I was so grateful to him, because then when he passed, we knew exactly where to go.
Right. It's one less thing to worry about.
Yeah, your parent, you need to know that, but also don't forget, you need to do that too, and make sure somebody else knows where those items are.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very important.
So, it honestly, it becomes kind of, when you're working with your parent and going through things, it can be a treasure hunt, because you never know what you'll find. If it's a bit of a hoarding situation, it's more like an archaeological dig. But don't forget, the treasures are there. You just it takes some time. You got to get dirty.
Right. Right. Right.
So.
You got to get to them. Leads into that after death situation, which is a whole different set of circumstances, because then, everything suddenly becomes important. It doesn't matter if it's a sock or a jacket or a couch. It's all the same level of importance, because they're gone and you're holding on.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what you advise for that, because it's hard. It's a different section.
It really is such a nightmare. And this is why planning ahead and knowing your parents' wishes can really help, because obviously the parent dies, your brain is swollen with grief.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly there's this pages of to-dos to do.
Yeah.
Within, say, 10 days, because you're dealing with the funeral and everything else. And so this is why getting your parents to plan, and also for you planning yourself, it can help. So at least okay, they want to be buried there. Ideally, they've already paid for the cremation, the plot, the whatever. And so, did they want military honors? Yes, no, things like that. That makes it easier if they will do that. But still, there's so much to do.
And then all their stuff.
Mm-hmm. So long as it's possible, ignore what's in the house if you can for a month, because you're going to be going through so much. Again, the funeral, the memorial, trying to get hold of the bank accounts. Where's the will? What's that? Is there a trust?
Right.
So, and God forbid frankly, if there's probate involved, chances are you can't touch anything in the stuff. Right. In the house, pardon me. You can't touch anything in the house. But once it comes to that time to handle it, just know it's going to be really emotional, and consider the same things you were thinking about when you were trying to get your parents to let go of things, or listen to this podcast again. The things that I advised to say to your parents, say them to yourself. Take photos of items, and really sit there and think. And again, you can have a big maybe pile. That's allowed. Big maybe pile, and just try taking pictures of things and see if that satisfies you. Know that you'll do the first culling, and if you have time before you move it all to your house, try to do a second cull. if you can.
Mm-hmm.
Now, chances are you're dealing with siblings, other beneficiaries, with whom you may or may not have a good relationship. I will say this. I mean, if you end up being the executor of the estate, just know that suddenly you have the role of the estate's being the CEO of the estate thrust upon you. And boy, do you have HR problems.
Yes, you do.
Because the best of families will butt heads through this because of all the emotions. The more you can get people to talk about their grief and their emotions, and especially when you're dealing with items, have your brother tell that story about this thing. So what's the story behind that?
Mm-hmm.
The same things that I advise using with parents, you can use with others, and also, like I say, yourself. And sometimes have a friend there and tell them, ask me these questions. Because trust me, I've had my own staff over to work on my garage, and we all chuckle because I end up saying the same things our clients do. So just know, I mean, even a professional of this, trust me, you say this, you feel the same way about things. If there's extreme disagreement and or people are far flung,
yeah,
and it's hard to fly in, I really recommend a home inventory. And if there are any legal whisperings, it's great to hire a professional to do the home inventory. We do those. I've always had that as one of our services. Sometimes it's just photos, and people can go and pick and choose what they want. If there's extreme discord, there is a platform called fairsplit.com, where you can do the inventory, and then there's a section of it where it helps to divide things fairly and equally, both from a financial standpoint and also a sentimental standpoint. It can really help.
Oh, wow.
Because that's, as we know, very difficult. There are times when we've worked with clients where it's getting very legal. And so we do a full-on report, details and everything. I think the biggest one we picked out was 430 plus pages.
Holy cow.
That's when it gets really bad. It's legal and everything like that. But a home inventory is very helpful, like I say, when people are trying to decide, and even if you're living locally and you're basically getting along, it gives people a chance to sit with those photos alone and really think it through.
Okay.
So that can really be very helpful. And just know it's going to be hard. Ideally, don't be doing this by yourself, going through the items. It's too hard. It's too hard, and you won't want to do it. Also, limit the amount of time, 4 to 5 hours, maybe 6, maybe once or twice.
It's a good day. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If you can, have a friend there. Again, there are professionals who can help you. And by the way, if you're looking for someone who does what I do, my company's Clear Home Solutions. We cover Los Angeles County and most of Ventura County. There are 1,000 members in our national organization.
And you are the president of that national association.
Such an honor. It's just a great profession and great people. And there's 1,000 members, mostly in the US, but we got a good cadre up in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, England, I think in Ireland too.
Okay.
Just what you can go to the website. It's NASM.org, NASMM.org. It stands for the National Association of Senior and Specialty Move Managers.
Okay.
And you can go on there. There's a place where it says find a move manager, plug in your zip code, and it will find people local to you. Ideally, look for companies that have been around for 5 years or more. Ideally, see if I was actually the first certified senior move manager in the country. Also, does the company itself have accreditation? That's for the whole company, industry accreditation. You have had to have a couple of hundred projects and clients that you've moved already. You have to have all your business systems in place. So look for ideally people like that in your area who are really qualified, and then talk to more than one. I mean, mind you, I love it when people make a referral and it's just Clear Home Solutions and us. And at the same time, I think it is good for, especially when you're dealing with the older adults, the daughter, to talk to a couple of companies and people, because you want to get a sense of who's the right fit, especially if you're dealing with dementia and or a hoarding situation, things like that, to see who really has the patience, and also above all, who your parent sparks to and who you as the daughter spark to.
Sure. Well, what type of cost does that involve?
Oh, it varies area to area. It just depends where you are. anywhere from $60 an hour to $120 an hour, depending. It is an investment. The thing to keep in mind is it will move faster because, again, this is what we do as a profession. Additionally, I know with our company, I think most senior move management companies, we will put together an estimate for you. And the thing is, you can work with us as much or as little as you want and need to. So, for example, I know we have a couple of packages with Clear Home Solutions, like 4 hours. Let's just do 4 hours with you, or 6 or whatever. And let's just jumpstart that packing part, this sorting and downsizing. And then you can bring us back in when you need more help. Supervising move day can really be helpful. I'm just saying, and with the resources, that can really make a big difference, because that way you're not scouring the internet. You're not the one who has to ask all these questions and interview with them and whatever.
Right.
That can really help save you time and aggravation. But yeah, go to nasm.org, NASMM.org, and see who's in your area.
And it is an investment because it's so big and it's so emotional. I mean, it just is. And your time is worth something, and your mental anguish is worth something. And to be able to talk it through with somebody, to say, okay, what do I do with this room? Like anything, oh, that garage. How do I attack this? Because you think, I'll just start putting things in boxes. No, that's not how this works. You have to sort, and you've got it's a production. You just need a top hat. I mean, it's a production. And
tap shoes.
And tap shoes. I mean, it is a big thing. And so sometimes it's just, even if it's just to get that advice, like something for yourself, because it's hard. It's really hard.
It really is challenging. And people say, oh, we can get them packed in a few days.
No, you can't.
No, we as a company, or the professionals can, but no, it'll be a debacle. You want things packed properly. You want them to get there in one piece. You want things labeled properly.
Right.
All of that. And you want to go through the downsizing. Again, you don't want to be downsizing afterward.
No. Yeah. The throw it in a box and we'll worry about it later is like, you're setting yourself up. You're setting yourself up.
Lots of grief. And also, going back to what you're talking about. Yeah. We're cheaper than therapy. That's for sure.
Yes, you are. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it's much more efficient. And again, you can work with us as much or as little as you need and want to. This is another thing I tell people. So I call it the emotional flu of moving. I mentioned that I call it dislocation, not relocation, because you're going to feel out of joint.
Right.
I also refer to moving, I call it the emotional flu of moving, because you're not going to feel right until you get to the other end. Now, the good thing is you do get over the flu, but in the meantime, you're going to feel out of sorts, and that's normal.
Okay.
So when you find yourself losing your mind and wondering why, I tell clients, I'm losing my mind. It's like, no, you're moving, and this is normal. I know it's still miserable, but what you're feeling is normal. So don't compound it with, why am I feeling this way? You're moving. It's called moving. These emotions you're feeling are called moving.
Okay. And the anxiety and the fear and are we doing the right thing? Are we not doing the right thing? Are we going to be happy there? It's all part of that emotional flow.
Yeah. Remember, you're dislocating, and that hurts. And it's like with it has to heal.
Yep.
And in the meantime, though, when you're doing the physical therapy and everything, it hurts. And same thing with the emotional flu. When you have the flu, you're coughing and hacking, and you want more sleep. All of that.
Right.
And just at least say, this is normal. It sucks, but it's normal.
Okay.
And that often helps kind of, okay, it's not just me. This is really just just goes with the whole moving part. And above all, no matter how you go about it, please make sure that you get rest, that your parent gets rest, and that you find the time and emotional space to really care for one another. That's the most important thing, because you as the daughter are going through so much that usually is not recognized.
A big thank you to Marty Stevens-Heebner for being my guest today. To find out more information about Marty, check out our website, clearhomesolutions.com, and to find a senior move manager, head to NASMM.org. I hope you enjoyed our podcast today. Head over to daughterhood.org and click on the podcast section for show notes, including the full transcript and links to any resources and information from today's episode. You can find and review us on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you listen to your podcasts. We are also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Daughterhood the Podcast. Feel free to leave me a message and let me know what issues you may be facing and would like to hear more about. Or even if you just want to say hi, I'd love to hear from you. Also, a very special thank you to Susan Rowe for our theme music, the instrumental version of her beautiful song Mama's Eyes from her album Lessons in Love. I hope you found what you were looking for today: information, inspiration, or even just a little company. This is Roseanne Corcoran. I hope you'll join me next time in Daughterhood.